My daughter told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I smiled and went home. 2 days later, I had 18 missed calls, and the mortgage for her new home was canceled. The phone in my hand felt heavy, colder than usual. I had just hung up from a conversation with my daughter, Sarah, a conversation that felt less like a chat and more like a carefully managed transaction. "Dad," she had said, her voice dripping with a practiced sweetness that I had long since learned to mistrust. "We've decided to have a small, intimate Christmas this year. Just me, Mark, and the kids. You know, a break from all the usual stress. We thought it would be best if you just celebrated on your own this year." Now I was being told I wasn't welcome. The reason, of course, wasn't about stress or intimacy. It was about appearances. Sarah and her husband, Mark, had just bought a sprawling 5-bedroom house in an upscale neighborhood. They were climbing the social ladder, and my simple, unassuming presence, my blue-collar roots, and my modest retirement were an embarrassment to them. I was a stain on their pristine new life. This wasn't the first time. For years, my life had been a source of financial support for them, but never emotional. I'd paid for Sarah's car, helped with Mark's failed business ventures, and quietly footed the bill for a lot of their emergencies. I had always hoped my love would be enough to keep our family together, but all it did was make me a target. They saw my kindness as naivety, my quiet demeanor as a sign of weakness. They believed they could take everything from me and in return give me nothing but contempt. The Christmas snub was the final insult, the breaking point. It was a cold, calculated move to sever the last emotional ties while still keeping the financial line open. Just last week, Sarah had called, her voice full of a giddy excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Dad, we found our dream house. The mortgage is a little tight, but with your help we can make it happen." She had expected me to co-sign the mortgage, to put my life savings on the line for their grand, beautiful house. I had agreed, of course, a quiet nod of approval. They thought they had me. They thought my love for them was a blank check they could cash at any time. I hung up the phone and walked to the kitchen, a cold, hard knot of resolve tightening in my chest. The feeling of sorrow was still there, but it was being rapidly replaced by a steely determination. They had mistaken my patience for weakness. They had used my love against me. Now it was time to show them that the man who had built a successful manufacturing business from a one-man garage operation was not to be trifled with. The man who had spent his life meticulously planning, budgeting, and executing was about to put those skills to a very different use. I walked over to the desk where my laptop sat, a silent testament to my long-forgotten skills. I hadn't just been a machinist, I had been an entrepreneur. I had navigated complex financial regulations, negotiated ruthless contracts, and understood the inner workings of banks and credit agencies better than most people. While Sarah and Mark had been buying flashy new cars and designer clothes, I had been building a quiet, unshakable fortress of financial security. I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank's website. With a few keystrokes, I pulled up the documentation for the co-signed mortgage. The contract had a clause, a small legal detail that Mark, in his haste and arrogance, had undoubtedly overlooked. A clause that allowed me, the co-signer, to withdraw my support under very specific and now very relevant circumstances. I smiled, a real smile this time, one that felt like a quiet victory. They had wanted to shut me out of their Christmas, to make me a lonely old man. They had wanted my money, but not my presence. Now they were about to get neither. The phone rang again. It was Sarah. I looked at the screen, at her picture, her smiling face, and I let it ring. The first seed of my plan had been planted. It was time to watch it grow. The next 2 days were a symphony of their arrogance. Sarah called, not to apologize, but to confirm my Christmas plans, making sure I was out of the way. "It's for the best, Dad," she'd say, her voice a little too cheerful. "You can just have a quiet day. We'll have a big family celebration in the spring, okay?" She was a master of manipulation, and she thought she had me perfectly under her thumb. I spent those days meticulously executing my plan. The first step was a visit to my lawyer, Evelyn. She had been my friend and legal counsel for decades, and she listened to my story with a quiet fury. "They've gone too far, Robert," she said, her voice hard. "This is not just disrespect, it's a pattern of financial exploitation. It's time to end it." The letter was a masterpiece of legal precision, citing the specific clause that allowed me to do so. The reason I gave was a simple, yet devastating one. A change in my financial circumstances that could impact my ability to fulfill the co-signer's obligations. The bank, bound by protocol, would have no choice but to act. They wouldn't inform Sarah and Mark immediately, but the wheels had begun to turn. My second move was to transfer all my liquid assets into a new secure trust. This trust was explicitly and legally set up for my late wife's favorite charity, a small foundation that helped single mothers with vocational training. The paperwork was a final, loving tribute to Martha's memory and a powerful message to Sarah and Mark. My money was not a commodity for them to exploit, but a tool for good, a testament to the values they had so carelessly discarded. I could feel their confidence growing, their arrogance reaching a fever pitch. Mark called, his voice booming with a false bravado. "Thanks for getting the mortgage sorted, Robert," he said. "The bank just called and said everything's on track. We're closing on the house next week." He and Sarah were so sure of their triumph, they didn't even consider the possibility that I was orchestrating their downfall. They thought my quiet demeanor meant I was a simple, confused old man, unaware of the complexities of the world they so desperately wanted to be a part of. The first crack in their perfect world appeared on Christmas Eve. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from the mortgage broker. "Mr. Roberts, we are just calling to confirm your co-signing for the new loan. We have a letter from your attorney with some questions about your financial situation. Can you please call us back as soon as you can?" I smiled grimly. The letter had landed. I received 3 more calls from unknown numbers and then the inevitable. My phone began to ring with Sarah's number, an insistent, desperate buzz. The first call went unanswered. The second, the third. I sat there sipping a cup of hot tea, the silence of my home a comforting, peaceful thing. I looked at my phone. 18 missed calls. The message was clear. Their carefully constructed world, built on my money and their own self-importance, was about to come crashing down, and I was ready to watch it fall. The frantic pounding on my front door was the sound of a world imploding. It was Christmas morning, a time for peace and goodwill, but the only thing I heard was the sound of pure, unadulterated panic. I opened the door to see Sarah and Mark standing there, their faces pale and streaked with tears. "Dad, what did you do?" Sarah screamed, her voice a raw, desperate thing. I looked at them, my heart a quiet, steady rhythm in my chest. "Merry Christmas, dear," I said, a faint smile on my face. "I thought you were having a quiet, intimate day. The bank called. They said the mortgage is canceled. They said you revoked your co-signing. We're going to lose the house." I gestured for them to sit, but they remained standing, their eyes wide with fear and disbelief. "Oh, that," I said, as if discussing a forgotten chore. "Yes, I did that. You see, the bank had some questions about my financial stability. I couldn't, in good conscience, continue to co-sign the mortgage for a house that I, a man you considered an embarrassment, was not welcome to visit. But we're your family," she whispered, her voice a fragile wisp of a sound. "We need this. We worked so hard for it. You thought my love was a blank check you could use to buy your perfect life. You used my money to pay for your dream house, but you didn't want me in it. That, my dear, is not family, that is greed." The bank, seeing my decision as a sign of financial instability on my part, and a red flag about Mark and Sarah's own finances, officially revoked the loan. The sellers of the house, who had another offer, moved on, and Sarah and Mark were left with nothing. The deposit they had put down, a significant sum, was lost due to a breach of contract. Their dream house had become a financial black hole. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Their carefully constructed social facade crumbled. The neighbors they had so desperately tried to impress now saw them for what they were: a couple who had tried to take advantage of an old man and had failed spectacularly. The story, picked up by the local paper, was a masterpiece of poetic justice, detailing how my Christmas gift to them was a life lesson in the true meaning of family. The article was a final, public humiliation. I watched their world fall apart, not with joy, but with a quiet sense of peace. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had shown them that my worth wasn't measured in money, but in integrity and self-respect. My new beginning was one of freedom, of peace, and of a profound understanding that the best gifts in life are the ones you give to yourself. Sarah and Mark were left with their shattered dreams, their canceled mortgage, and a life lesson they would never forget. They had wanted to shut me out of their Christmas, but in the end, they had shut themselves out of my life forever. The 18 missed calls were a frantic, desperate plea for a second chance, but it was too late to regret.